Folks, the thing about God is very, very, very long-suffering. It's not just good advice. He's telling you, I want your attention. He wants you to listen. So let's look at the book now and go through this. We can't hit everything in the book, but I'll try to give you as exhaustive as I have time to give you, okay? So in chapter 1, we see God's wrath against Jacob for idolatry. And notice the summons in chapter 1, verse 2 to 4. Just Israel, all earth, and let the Lord God be witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple. Where is his holy temple? Where is God's holy temple? God's holy temple. He's speaking from heaven. So where is it? What heaven? Third heaven. It's in the third heaven. He's speaking from his throne. His holy temple. The throne of Almighty God. He's speaking. Okay? He wants a hearing from his people. Verse 3. So we see the summons to the people here. Verse 4, he goes on to say, and the mountains shall be molten under him. What's molten mean? To melt. To melt. Under him. What happened when he came down on Sinai? What was that picture? Man, fire and smoke. And you people don't come near this mountain and don't you dare touch it. You touch it, you die. God. It's a sobering, I would say a terrifying thing to go in the presence of the holy God. Amen. Thank God we have somebody there that we can go into his presence through, don't we?
Amen.
And that's our high priest, the Lord Jesus. And the valley shall be cleft or cut, whacked in two, whatever, as wax before the fire, and as the find here the attitude of Jehovah toward the whole earth, and Israel is the center of it. God used Israel to teach the world both about blessing and about judgment, because they knew about the crossing of the Red Sea. The people in the land knew about it. He brought them through miraculously. They knew. But then Israel comes into the land and they're scared to death, ostracized, and then being slain. So God here is summoning all people. Prayer saying,
Kingdom come, thy will be done.
I will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Is God's will always done in heaven?
Yeah.
Better believe it. And our prayer is to be that his will would be done here as it is up there. His will is always done in heaven. He wants his will done down here as well. How does it go down here, by the way? Well, ask yourself. You always doing the will of God? The answer?
No.
No, we're not. No, we're not always doing the will of God. We notice to the earth where men have rebelled, to the high places of the rebellious authority, those who rule over people. And then we see that what is going to happen, the valleys and the fire and the waters and all of that. And when God comes down, folks, things happen. Amen? When God comes down, things happen. You know. Now, secondly, we not only see the sons to the people, but we see God's address in verses 5 through 7. And in this address, the speech, as it were, he gives the cause of this coming judgment in verse 5. For the transgression of Jacob is all this, and for the sins of the house of Israel. Here's the reason for the judgment. For the transgression of who? Who's Jacob? Who's it referring to?
Israel.
Okay, that's another name for Israel. Jacob was called Israel by God. And for the sins of the house of Israel. What is the transgression of Jacob? Is it not Samaria? And what are the high places of Judah? Are they not Jerusalem? What was going on in Samaria? By the way, wasn't that the capital of the northern kingdom? What was going on in the capital of the northern kingdom? There's not one good king out of the whole bunch. Moses in the south, except in the south there was Athaliah usurped the throne maybe 5 years. And then who did Jehoiada bring out? Because his sister hid him. He knows that, Joash. And Jehoiada brought him out and put the crown on him, and they did away with Athaliah. And took her off the scene. So the speech here, the reason, the cause for the judgment, the transgression of Jacob, the sins of the house of Israel.
I think it means
To turn away, to leave, to depart from. And that's what Israel had done. And by the way, Judah does the same thing. They apostatize. And by the way, our country's filled with apostate churches today.
Sure.
You say, what's an apostate church? It's a church that claims to be Christian, but is not following this. Or they use it, they don't follow. If you want to check out some of the groups, ask them what they do with this book and what they believe about it. And watch what they practice and see if they're following what the Bible says. And you'll find out they're not following what the Bible says. They've apostatized from the Bible. That's why there would be even a debate about homosexuality in churches today and letting homosexual leaders or homosexuals be pastors. That would even be on the table when you know what the Bible says. Amen?
Amen.
And that some churches, I know a friend of mine's in the church, and he says they're trying to decide what to do with this. I said, they're trying to decide. I said, well, follow the Bible. He said, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Duh. Shouldn't have left it to begin with. But we see in chapter 1, verse 8 to chapter 2, verse 5, the prophetic message here. Notice how it begins in verse 8 with the prophet himself. Notice what he says. This is Micah. And by the way, Micah is just a country boy. He's a countryman. He's not anybody important. Several of the men like that, the prophets are like that. They're just men that God said, hey, like old Gideon wasn't a prophet, but he was a judge. God called him to lead the army, remember? And Gideon says, me? What do you want me for? Who am I? Who's my family? Well, nobody. It's who we're looking for. So here we have Micah. And Micah is not just delivering the message of God. Look at his reaction, verse 8. Therefore I will wail and howl and go stripped and naked. That's a sign of mourning. It's a sign of grief. He's broken. That's what God's going to do to his country and to his people. Let me ask you a question. Are you concerned about what might happen to America? You better be. I often wonder, I've read, just read through the story of Hezekiah again. After his recovery from his sickness, Babylon sent an emissary over there, some emissaries, to give him a gift and to congratulate him on recovering. Remember that? Yeah. And what did Hezekiah do? He took them around and showed them everything they had, from the wealth, the money, the artillery, everything they had, their armies. And the prophet came and said, hey, who are these people? He said, oh, they're from old Babylon. Well, what did they see? Everything. Really? Well, they're going to take it one of these days. They're going to get it. Do you know that? How do you remember Nixon bringing the Chinese over here and paraded them around and showed them all the that? You ever wonder about that? You know, God hates pride. You start parading your pride around, and God's going to take it down. And I've often wondered. You say, well, it's been a long time ago since Nixon was in there. But you know how long it was before God took
Nixon.
Judah down? After Hezekiah's sin, of parading around to see everything? God doesn't act just like that, folks. But he will act. And I've often wondered about that. They've seen a lot of what we have. They have a lot of our technology now, don't they? We just want to give it to them. Well, don't get frightened. Don't get dismayed. God's still in control. Amen? But I just wondered about that sometimes. What's God got in mind? for our country if we don't turn back. Well, let's quit meddling and keep moving, right? Okay, let's go on. The prophetic message, we see the lamentation of the prophet in verses 8 to 10, his personal grief. The wounds of his people were incurable. Notice in verses 8 to 10. Find my place here. Verse 9. For her wound is incurable. In other words, there's no cure for this. Judgment is going to come. Okay? There's no answer. That's what's coming. It's the judgment. For it is come unto Judah. He is come unto the gate of my people, even to Jerusalem. Declare it not at Gad. Weep ye not at all in the house of Ephraim. Roll thyself in the dust. In other words, this is what's coming. I want to tell you. What if you knew that we were going to be invaded? You knew it. What would you do? Would you be scared? Oh, we got defenses. Let me tell you something. If God wants us to go down, I don't care what you got. You're not going to defend yourself. That's been proven in history. I read a book on World War II several years ago. How close Hitler came to accomplishing his objective. How close he came. And of course we said, well, the Americans stepped in. No, folks. America was in it with the Allies. And the only answer you have is God stepped in.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, you're not. You're not going to do it. They were powerful. No question about it. What was going on? But God stepped in. Amen? And when God steps in, you better be on God's side. Amen? You better be on the right side of this thing when God steps in. All right? Now notice, in verses 11 to 16, a wailing description of the judgment. 11 through 16 is a wailing description of the judgment. I'll not take time to win all that. However, let me just give you these names. You'll find these words in here, these names. Let me run through them with you. There's Bethel Ephra. That word Ephra up there means dust, the house of dust. Okay, that's in verse, what was that at? Verse 10. Verse 11, we have Sephar. That means beautiful. Beautiful. Zaanam. That name means sheep pastures. Bethazel. That's in verse 11. That means house of the tide. Then you have in the next verse, 12, the inhabitant of Moroth. Moroth means bitter springs. Then you come down to verse 13, the inhabitant of Lachish. The idea of that word is swift beast. Then Moresheth Gath. That's in verse 14. That simply means the possession of Gath. That's the city, town he lived in. Then we have this word Ogzil. The idea of that word is a brook failing in summer. A brook failing in summer. And then the last one we have Marisha. Marisha in verse 15 means summit. What's a summit? That's the top. Those guys are trying to get to the top of what mountain? Everest. Got to get to the summit. Okay, let's move quickly. Go on here. Now we go to chapter 2. We see the cause of this statement in verse 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil on their beds. When the morning's light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. He's describing their sin and how they were thinking, what they were doing. They were thinking about it in the night, getting up and carrying it out in the daytime. By the way, is that going on today? By the way, they're not doing it after dark only anymore, are they? No. They're brazen about it. The sin, verses 1 and 2. In verse 3, you see the consequent action on Jehovah's part. In verse 3, therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, against this family do I devise an evil, from which you shall not remove your necks, neither shall you go haughtily. What's haughtily mean? Proud, lifted up, haughty. For this time is evil, he says. move on to verses 6 through 11. Verses 6 through 11. Here we see the false prophets. In verse 6, prophesy ye not, say they to them that prophesy, they shall not prophesy to them, that they shall not take shame. O thou that art named the house of Jacob, is the Spirit of the Lord straitened? Are these his doings? Do not my words do good to him that walketh uprightly? Even of late my people is risen up as an enemy, to pull off the rope with the garment from them that pass by securely, as a man averse from war. The women of my people have you cast out from their pleasant houses, from their children have you taken away my glory forever. Arise ye and depart, for this is not your rest, because it is polluted. It shall destroy you, even with a sore destruction. So here the prophet, they interrupt the prophet and protest against his message. And to them, Jehovah's answer is that the change and rebellious attitude of his people counts for the change in his attitude. Here's what you're like, what's your attitude, here's what I am going to do. Here's what I am planning. And then in verses 12 to 13, we see the promise of deliverance. Look at it. I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together as the sheep of Bosra, and the flock as the flock in the midst of their fold. They shall make great noise by reason of the multitude of men. The breakers come up before them. They have broken up and have passed through the gate and are gone out by it, and their king shall pass before them, and the Lord on the head of them. God promises them, after judgment, deliverance. You know, God is good, isn't he? God only judges because of our sin. But after judgment comes restoration, deliverance. Amen? And God is a God of deliverance. But let's look at the second part of this, in chapters 3 to 5. Here we have a message to rulers concerning the coming one. The coming one. First of all, in chapters 3, 1 to 12, we see the sins of the heads, the leaders, and the consequent judgment. I'll just rush through these. In verses 1 to 4, you have the sins of the princes. Who are the princes? We're not talking about she's, we're talking about the he's. Who are the princes? That's your leaders. That's your government leaders, okay, political leaders. Then secondly, in verses 5 to 8, you have the prophets. Who are the prophets?
False prophets.
They're supposed to be the spokesman for God, right?
False prophets.
But they're false prophets. False prophets. Then you have the ruling classes in verses 9 to 12. The heads. Notice, look at verse 12, what they were doing. Chapter 3, verse 12. Is that where I want? Let's look at verse 9. Hear this, I pray you, heads of the house of Jacob, and princes of the house of Israel, that abhor judgment and pervert all equity. They build up Zion with blood, and Jerusalem with iniquity. The heads thereof judge for reward, and the priests thereof teach for hire, and the prophets therefore divine for money. Yet will they lean upon the Lord and say, is not the Lord among us? None evil can come upon us. In other words, they're justifying their sins because they serve who? Jehovah. But they're doing it for this. And God's going to judge you for it. Hirelings. Remember Jesus talked about hirelings in John chapter 10, didn't he? What's a hireling? He's doing it for money. He's in it for what he can get out of it. Not for the right reason. Hirelings. And that's what these people were. Then verses 4 to 5, we see the coming one and the consequent deliverance in chapter 3. Or chapters 4 and 5. The coming one and the consequent deliverance. Look at chapter 4 as we begin it. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow into it. And many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of God, the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. What is he talking about? When is this going to take place? Has it taken place? Yes or no? No. He's going far beyond where God is headed. Amen? The day is coming when all people around the world will worship God, whether they want to or not. So how could that be? They won't have any choice. But there'll be a day of separating them out. When is that going to happen? The end of the millennium. When Satan is released. And this massive army, finally, they're out from under Christ. And they rush to the devil. And they're going to be destroyed. Okay. This is talking about the coming kingdom that God has commanded for not just Israel, but for the world. Notice in verse 3, and he shall judge among many people and rebuke the strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. When is that going to happen? Have you seen it yet? Because it hasn't happened yet, but it's coming. By the way, does that verse sound familiar? Dennis?
Messiah.
Messiah. Can you think of another passage that brings that up? Wayne, you ought to get this.
9:6.
Isaiah.
Isaiah 9:6, 6:7.
Isaiah says the same thing. Okay? Another prophet says the same thing. You know who the third prophet is that says this? Talks about taking the swords and beating them into plowshares. They're going to stop fighting each other and warring. It's going to be a peace. They're going to be farming and living off the land, living peacefully. Every man under his own vine and his own tree.
Zechariah.
No.
John in Revelation.
It's actually Job. Job chapter 3, verse 10. Taking the swords and beating them into plowshares. There's going to be peace, folks. The day's coming. Notice verse 4. But they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree. And none shall make him afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts hath spoken. That's future, folks. That's future. When the Lord Jesus Christ is reigning, there will be no more war. Amen? There will be no more killing, murder, rape, destruction on planet Earth. Because the King will be reigning. And that will not be tolerated. Doesn't mean everybody's going to be saved that are here during that time, but they can't do anything. They can think it. And there'll be those who have it in their heart, and that'll come out at the end, but they can't do it. Amen? Wouldn't it be nice if it was that way today? People like to murder, but can't do it. Or won't let me. I like to steal, but can't steal. Or won't let me. That day's coming. Amen? Or we believe it or not, it's coming. Believe it's coming. The millennial reign of Jesus Christ. So he's taking us way down in the future here all of a sudden. The coming one, that's the Messiah. And the consequent deliverance in chapter 4 through chapter 5 and verse 1. Verses 1 to 7, we look ahead. Okay, the establishing of it. In verses 8 through 5:1, you see the present in light of the future. And the assurance that it shall come. There's hope. Then in chapter 5, verses 2 to 15, the deliverer and the deliverance. So let's jump over there quickly to chapter 2. Here's the deliverer. Tells you where he's going to be born. All right? Bethlehem, Ephratah. Though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting. Let me ask you a question. When did Jesus rule over Israel? He didn't. He didn't come to rule. He came to die. Look at your Bible. Is he going to rule? The Bible says he is.
Yes.
He's going to rule over Israel. He's going to rule over the entire world. The ruler is coming. Now he's left for a while. He's in heaven right now. He's going to be back. Amen? He's going to be back. So here we have the deliverer and the coming deliverance, the coming one in verse 2. His program, verses 3 to 9. And the word of God concerning it in chapter 5, verses 10 to 15. Then quickly to chapter 6 and 7. Here we have a message to the chosen concerning the controversy. Look at chapter 6, verse 1. Here we have the third prophecy. Hear ye now what the Lord saith. Arise, contend thou before the mountains. Let the hills hear thy voice. Hear ye, O mountains, the Lord's controversy, and you strong foundations of the earth. For the Lord hath a controversy with his people, and he will plead with Israel. But they won't listen. Did they listen to Jesus?
No.
What did they do to him? They crucified him. What did they do to the prophets? Same thing. They killed him. Tradition tells us that when you read Hebrews, it talks about being sawn asunder. What does that mean? This is not a magician's trick. We put them in a box and cut them in half, they come out whole. You know, how they do it, I don't know. Somehow they do it. But we're talking about literally sawn asunder. Tradition says that they did that to Isaiah. Do you find that, Wayne, in your studies of Isaiah, or is that
Yeah,
not a book?
They put it in the log and sawed the
Cut
log.
the log in two with him inside him. Sawn asunder. The things they did to the prophets in killing them because they did not want to hear the message. Like old Zedekiah, was it Zedekiah? No, Jehoiakim, sitting before the fireplace. They brought this scroll into him. What did he do with it? He said, I don't want this stuff. He took his penknife out. What that was a Barlow, what that was.
Swiss Army knife.
Swiss Army took his penknife out, he cut it up and threw it in the fire. Said, that's what I think about that. Did he live to regret that?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, he did. He lived to regret that decision. So I don't want to hear it. So the summons to the people in verses 1 and 2. In verses 3 to 5, you have a plaintive appeal. Look at verse 3. O my people, what have I done unto thee? And wherever have I grieved thee? Testify against me, God is saying. For I brought thee out of the land of Egypt, redeemed thee out of the house of servants. I sent before thee Moses, Aaron, Miriam. O my people, remember now what Balak, king of Moab, consulted, and what Balaam the son of Beor answered him from Shittim unto Gilgal, that you may know the righteousness of the Lord. He said, listen, what have I done to you? What had God done to them? He blessed them. Gave them land. Gave them their crops. Everything they had. And that's how they treated them. It's a sad commentary on human nature, isn't it? In verses 8 and 9, we see the prophet. And the answer of how God wants us to live there in verse 8. And then in verses 10 to 16 of chapter 6, you see a terrible charge given. Look at verse 10. Are there yet the treasures of wickedness in the house of the wicked, and the scant measure that is abominable? Shall I count them pure with the wicked balances, and with the bag of deceitful weights? For the rich men thereof are full of violence, and the inhabitants thereof have spoken lies. Their tongue is deceitful in their mouth. That sounds like a mistake, doesn't it? Yeah, I'm sorry. Sound familiar? Readers, what the content, the dishonesty, the lack of justice in the land, and so forth. Then we see in chapter 7, verses 1 to 10, we see the people. In verse 1 it says, woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits as the get great glean into the vintage. There's no cluster. My soul desires the first fruit. The good man is perished out of the earth, and there's none apart from him. They all lie and hate for blood. They hunt every man his brother with a net, but they make evil with both hands. The prince asketh, and the judge asketh for a reward. And the great man, he uttereth his mischievous desires, so they wrap it up. The best of them is as a briar, the most upright is sharper than a thorn hedge. The day of thy watchman and thy visitation cometh. Now shall be their perplexity.